guys, Lee Martin here, and I'm back at you bringing the heat in college football's Week 11 with my top 5 picks of the week, also known as my Fierce 5. Let's get down to business and bury our bookmakers on Saturday. Let's start with my first of 5 picks in the ACC as the Seminoles travel to Chestnut Hill to take on Boston College Eagles. As many of you know, Florida State fired their head coach, Willie Taggart, and now the Seminoles will have less than a week to get on the same page as interim head coach Odell Haggins. It doesn't really help that they are on the road facing a much improved ACC foe in BC. Speaking of the Eagles, they are coming off of an impressive 58-27 road win over Syracuse as 3-point underdogs. The key to this game is BC's superior running attack, averaging over 282 yards per game against an average at best FSU run-stop unit. Bovada is dealing the Eagles as 2-point home favorites, up 3 points from the opener when Florida State opened as 1-point road chalk. Despite the shift, we will ride the steam and back the Eagles to win by a touchdown or more against their guests from Tallahassee. Lay the deuce at Bovada and watch the Eagles soar. Let's move to the Midwest in another noontime game where Penn State will travel to Minnesota to take on the Golden Gophers in Big Ten action. In our second pick of the week, we have 2 undefeated teams, but one is a pretender while the other is a contender. Minnesota is the former while Penn State is the latter, and the Nittany Lions defense will prove to be too stingy for Minnesota's offense to gain any traction. Penn State is allowing just 9.6 points per game, while the Gophers' strong suit is their rushing game. That's not a recipe for success against a team like Penn State. And it's fair to say that when the day is done, Penn State will win this one by double digits due to a defense that will turn the Golden Gophers all shades of blue. Let's back the Nittany Lions -6.5 at Heritage. Moving on to our third pick, we'll take a shot at a big road dog against a 7-1 team that might be taking their opponent a bit lightly this week. I speak of the AAC matchup between UConn and Cincinnati. The Bearcats are 35-point favorites over the Huskies, and this one looks like a laugher. But looks can be deceiving, and if the odds makers want to give us a 5-touchdown head start, then who are we to say no? Cincinnati has blown out only one team this season, a 52-14 victory over Marshall earlier this season. And it's not surprising because they don't do anything on offense or defense that could be categorized as exceptional. They're just a very good team that happens to play in a rather weak conference. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling for an upset here, but the Huskies average over 20 points per game. And it wouldn't surprise me if they scored just that or a bit more against Cincinnati. That would mean that the Bearcats would have to put up at least 56 points to get the cover. That just ain't happening. Grab all those delicious points and back UConn at bookmaker. It's not always a great idea to bet the marquee games, but in a matchup of the top teams in the nation, I couldn't resist. In our fourth pick, we see LSU traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide. And it appears the money is flowing on the Tigers, as they opened as 7-point road dogs, but now we see that number has fallen to 6. When was the last time you got to bet Alabama, at home, laying only 6 points? Well, I can tell you it hasn't happened this season, as the Tide has been double-digit favorites in all 8 of their games. And while they haven't covered in all those big numbers, I can tell you that they won each and every one by double digits. LSU is coming off of a hard-fought 23-20 win over Auburn as 11.5-point favorites, and has covered only once in their last 6 meetings with Alabama. And now they have to pack up and play in Bama's own playground. That's too tall a task to ask of the Tigers. And whether Tua or Mac Jones gets the start under center for Alabama, it doesn't matter, because the Tide will roll on Saturday. You can bet on it. Lay the 6 on Bama at BetOnline. And for our big finale, we will switch from the SEC to the Big 12, where Oklahoma will host the Cyclones of Iowa State. I have a hunch the public will be more than willing to lay 2 touchdowns with the Sooners, after they were shocked last week by Kansas State as 23.5-point road favorites. Jalen Hurts proved himself again. He is Mr. Everything, as he passed for 395 yards, including 1 touchdown strike, and rushed for 3 touchdowns in the loss. But that Oklahoma defense can't hold water, and Iowa State has a passing machine named Brock Purdy. I believe the Sooners will run as much as possible against Iowa State, while the Cyclones will counter with a prolific passing game of their own. The Oklahoma secondary doesn't impress me, and Purdy will get plenty of passing yards in this one. Don't be a square and think the Sooners will suddenly win by 30 just because they lost last week. Getting 2 touchdowns with an Iowa State team that averages nearly 36 points per game looks like money to me. Bet the Cyclones plus 14 at Bovada. Well, there you have it, my best bets for Week 11 in college football. And if you want to check out these best bets in print, click the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and be sure to come back next week for my best bets in Week 12. But until then, I'm Lee Martin, and may all your wagers be winners.